Welcome to Office Hours, where a panel of tech experts answer your questions 7 days a week. You can ask your questions using Mukana. There you can also vote on questions and discuss them with others. If you don't have Mukana, you can sign up at askofficehours.global or officehours.global/join. You'll start to get emails with links to Mukana, Discord, and more. If you don't want to sign up, you can just ask your questions at askofficehours.global. That's the place where you can use a QR code that's going to appear on the screen here to get your questions in the queue, and it doesn't require any login or sign up. Let's go to our questions. Alexander.
First question this morning is from Douglas Carmichael. Could you see more service providers creating their own training programs like Clair Global's RIT program or NEP's apprenticeship program?
Jesse Kessler's going to start us off with answers this morning. Jesse, what do you got?
Absolutely, yes. These programs bring tremendous value to the company, so much value that we make our training sessions paid. The amount that we get back from that knowledge base being in our staff is worth more than cash to us.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, I actually think it's crazy not to do more of that. Obviously, this is one giant version of it, Office Hours. But Pixel Core for many years, we started with only doing training, similar to Office Hours. And as we built up, when we had huge pushes, we hired lots of people that we had been training for years. We had a consistent culture. We had a consistent, understanding of what to do, and it allowed us to do many things that most companies couldn't have achieved when it was necessary. So I think that this makes a lot of sense. I think that even as we kept on going with Pixel Core, we were always bringing in internships. We had usually 8 to 10 people. A lot of them now are producers at pretty large companies, because we brought them in and we didn't care. The easiest place to find them were people who were majoring in this area at a local community college or a local college. That was the easiest place to find where they were, but we didn't care how much they had gone to school. like we just, we brought them in and they would start rolling cables, but we would just keep on, every time they looked like they were useful, we would just keep adding weight to them, and saying, okay, well, let's have you manage some cameras. Let's have you run this. Let's have you be an A2. Let's have you be a TD. Like we got a small show that is relatively simple. We'll have you TD that. And as they continued to grow, we just kept on giving them more weight until they became producers, and able to manage those things. And over a year or two, they were paid employees, to do that. They started off as unpaid interns, but after 3 months, we would convert them, convert the ones that worked out and had the other ones go back to school, And so I think that it was, it befuddles me that more companies don't spend a lot of time building up the next generation. Now you can see that, Apple's, Code with Apple, the Grow with Google, these are large scale versions of that are, we're not getting the people that we need, so we're going to start building that training out. So I think you're going to see more and more of this, but these kind of programs are really powerful. And I believe Clair is working on bigger stuff too. This is just the beginning of what they're doing.
Guy Cochran.
Yeah, I'd love to see more of this. I mean, for the non-paid stuff, at AV Educate, a guy, Ed Willock and Omar, they have these, this one that's coming up is Intro to Corporate Show Calling. Ed did one recently on Dante. They have an audio boot camp coming up. But I mean, I think of this here, Office Hours is a great opportunity for us to, all collaborate. I was on a show this week where I was running 5 robos, and it was one of those things where I was like, man, I could easily just drop a VPN in here and have 3 people from Office Hour, or one person take over 3 of my cameras that were more static shots, just set them some presets, and then I could just focus on what I was doing. So I think in the future, we're going to see more of this, how do we collaborate with people all across the globe so that they can take over simple, not ranging from simple, like some of the graphics when we need to pop a lower third. I mean, the people on site, there was only 4 of us, but we were doing double duty, a lot of us, and it just created, there was one instance where the TD had to go take care of a record that the ISO wasn't going correct. So I had to lean over and get my finger on the cut button. I was running robos. So this is that cascading failure example where, because you don't have enough crew, and this is again where I see Office Hours coming into play, is where how can we utilize this global audience to where they can get this kind of training where it's, if you fail, like maybe run a show in parallel, and it's okay to let that one get hurt. Like right now we're doing it with evening hours, and we're seeing, some little gotchas, but that's how we learn. And so I think this space, more than anything, is one where we can get people around the world to really playing ball.
Alex, you want to come back in on this?
Yeah, I mean, we are in discussions with another studio, potentially to do some shooting where we start doing some more concerts. And what we're going to be doing is, again, you'll be hearing Nate and Marcia and others, cutting shows. You'll get to listen to them cut the shows. Our goal there is to start delivering those shows, making those available, all the camera angles, so that you can follow along, like listen to them, calling the shows and try to follow along. I think it's going to be a great way to learn. And for people who are in the Bay Area, at least, there'll be a chance to learn how to use cameras and, do those other things too. And those are, again, bringing in local artists or beginning artists or, that type of thing into a studio and cutting little concerts that are there. And so we're very close to having that rolling out again in the next couple months. And that could lead to much bigger things.
Let's dive into our next question.
Next question comes from Peter Moore in Auckland, New Zealand. I chatted with Florrie this week about her video she posted 6 months ago, and we chatted about synths. She mentioned they used a Prophet 5 and Juno 60. Wanted your opinion if you can tell if they use physical synths or software.
Alexander Knight's going to take a shot at that. Alexander?
I would challenge anyone to try to determine the difference. There's so many good software plugins now. I am by no means a synth expert, but I have heard some incredible emulations in software, and I would think it's pretty hard to tell the difference unless you really intimately know. Like if you have a vintage Prophet, right, not a recreation, you know exactly what that thing sounds like, maybe, but it's so hard to tell with well-produced stuff, and unless you see someone actually using it, it's hard to tell. I mean, I would take them at their word. They said they use a Prophet 5, so I'm sure they did.
Yeah, there you go. Next question.
Next one is a QR code question from Anawahi Black Bear Marshall in Hawaii. Please explain licensing for Isadora. It sounds like a lot of people want to get a patch from a designer to share for all of their shows and tours without paying for a single license for themselves, but be able to piggyback on the designer's purchase.
Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, they're not really piggybacking. It is the design of the system. So the idea is that you're designing a system and you're oftentimes needing to make changes and so on and so forth. And it means that the designers, this is the only way to really make this work well. The designers save, they pay for Isadora and they can save. If you're just opening the Isadora patch, or the project, you can use it all day long. This means that you don't have to worry about every person. There's a bunch of problems when we do shows where if you require licensing, what happens with that new computer? What happens with this next thing? And I think that Mark really thought this out very well as someone who comes from theater, that you can't have the ability to run the show be connected to a license, or people aren't going to use it. All it takes is one bad moment there. Also, it just really means that the designers are able to make that available to someone who's especially doing a show over and over and over again that doesn't need any changes. The reality is that most people doing the work in Isadora are going to need the license, because when you're sitting there building a show, whether it's an online show or a theatrical show, you're constantly changing things. You're constantly rebuilding the patch. You're constantly updating things. And so it's so that's I think that's the advantage there. And so I think that it's a perfect solution for that. They're not really piggybacking. They're not taking advantage of something Mark doesn't already know. But I think that he's built a great licensing process that works really well for creatives.
Hope that helped. Let's go to our next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. Sony ZV-E10 Mark II is set up with USB streaming on Zoom, but the Bluetooth remote won't work. Does Sony just allow one or the other, or can I use both at the same time?
Alex, I'm sorry, what's been your experience with multiple remotes?
I don't use the USB to stream anything, so I don't know whether you can do that or not, but I wouldn't do it. The quality coming out of the camera is much lower than the HDMI, so you want mine goes HDMI out into my switcher, and so that's where I'm putting it, or to a digitizer. But I would not use the USB-C out of the ZV-E10 for sending something to Zoom. You'll get a higher quality by sending it out of the HDMI output, which I think is a micro HDMI. So you definitely want the little, there's a cage for it, and then there's a little piece that is not It's not the one that just clamps onto the HDMI cable. There's another one that is an HDMI that attaches to the small rig cage and then runs out, and then you can run it in. You want that one. So that's going to have zero impact on that HDMI input. Then you have a full-size HDMI that just pops into the camera. That's what you want to use for that specific camera, and then use HDMI out, but don't use the USB-C.
Next question.
David Brady in New York City, New York, found a cable that is 3.5 millimeters TRRRS to stereo XLR Female, but unsure what it's for. What are some common uses for the TRRRS phone jack?
I have a couple of those. Alexander, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, they're more commonly found in high-end headphones. Now, we're probably all familiar with the TRRS quarter-inch patch cable. Now, in the scenario as an interconnect cable to connect two devices in like a balanced cabling setup with common mode noise rejection, you've got two signal wires and a ground. And of course, the TRRS, typically for mobile phones, which that extra conductor carries a microphone signal. This one basically is typically used for more balanced audio connections. I'm still not a fan of that connector, the physical size of it. I prefer XLR, which you can, by the way, find high-end headphones with balanced XLR. But basically, you've got negative and positive left, negative and positive right channel, and ground for your fifth conductor.
Alex?
Yeah, I think it's a XLR to balanced TRRRS. So, and it's not something it's something I'd probably only use in a pinch, as Alex alludes to. But I think that's what it's doing. It's delivering taking those two XLRs and delivering them as balanced inputs into an 1/8" jack.
The other cable that I run into a lot in my early days, Sony used to ship video audio cables that had a video signal along with stereo audio and a ground. So those used to be, you could tell because there's always a little yellow either sleeve or conductor on them. That was the video line. So that's why I used to have a lot of TRRRS cables around for the video and audio out of camcorders. Next question.
Next one is a QR code from Angelo Patton in Williamson, West Virginia. When playing music through our SQ Digitboard through amp to speakers, it goes low, then back to normal. It does do it all the time. It doesn't do it all the time. When it does happen, it lasts about 3 seconds. We have talked to different sound people with no help. Thanks.
Ooh, these are tough kinds of problems. Alex, you have some suggestions for them?
The most common thing that we have found for that, when you say 3 seconds, I immediately think you're in a clocking issue. So my question is, are you using Matty, Dante, something like that, or things with clocks in them? It is almost a drop of 3 seconds for me. I will immediately start looking for clocks. So it takes about 3 seconds for the clock to reset. So and we've definitely had this problem in the past with both Matty and with Dante, of having two clocks on the system, and they get mismatched, and you'll every once in a while, or at least once a day, and oftentimes multiple times a day, if that clocking is off, it will you'll hear it drop, wait for 3 seconds, and come back up as it resets that. But that has been the only thing I've ever seen drop for 3 seconds like that, if it's doing it regularly. I mean, there's a lot of things that can drop, but if it's happening the same way all the time, it's almost always a clocking error.
Alexander Knight.
Yeah, I'd like to know a little more details about the signal chain, Angelo. And if you're on our Discord, you can always reach out there. But if it's coming out of a Allen Heath digital console going into the amp, first thing I would do, if you have a powered speaker, if you can borrow a friend's powered speaker or rent one, take the amp out of the equation and just go direct out of the main outs, analog out. Do you still have the problem there? If you don't, if it's going into maybe an older power amplifier that you've had for a while, it's possible there could be some kind of failure happening in the amplifier section there, and they do go bad. So that's something that you can get service from any skilled electrician or any amp repair person.
Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. How mobile is your production setup with movable desks, lights, cameras, and how often do you change your gear and move it around?
Jesse Kester is going to start us off. Jesse?
Not mobile at all. Pretty much nothing in our studio has wheels on it, and we are constantly moving everything just to sometimes tweak it, sometimes rebuild everything up from scratch.
Guy Cochran.
Yeah, this set here I like to just leave as is because I come on this show pretty often. I have another room next door that has a Ergotron cart, which is like a medical cart that I can move around and change the background. When I had a bigger studio, this was a green screen where you can see kind of this building in the background. This was a large screen TV. And it just depended on the product. Like this was some close-ups, but this table that this is on is a movable cart. And then as I go through this, let me go back to that wide shot again. You could see this is a touchscreen TV, so I can just turn around and I could touch and cut myself on that. So here's the ATEM background. So I'll cut to the ATEM, and then I can, cut myself with using that touchscreen. So that was a pretty slick setup. I miss that setup, but it just depends on what you're showing and what kind of videos that you're creating.
Alex.
I never change it. So I'm going to change it soon. In the next couple of weeks, I'll probably rip it apart and put it back together. But I almost never move it, mostly because I'm pretty busy and I just want it to work when I get back. So constantly moving it means you're constantly fixing it. And there's lots of little things that kind of ring themselves out. I have the advantage of doing this every day, so it doesn't take very long, but it's usually if I'm going to make that change, it's going to happen right before a Saturday or something like that, where I've got the weekend to figure out what I screwed up. I am about to do some rearranging here, so we'll see how that goes.
Jeffrey Powers.
I am a very big proponent on putting everything on wheels, even though it might stay static. As most of you know, I moved to a brand new place and I'm finishing up my studio, as you can see. But I'm going to zoom out really quick because I'm going to show you what I just did. Excuse me. So this is an Ergotron WorkFit D desk. I have an AV card over there. That's where my computer is actually sitting on. So yesterday when I was on the show, I actually had this cart right in front of me so I could have it like the old style. But now I've moved it off to the side because I got a PTZ camera that's pointing on in here. This is on wheels. This is on wheels. My TV's back on wheels. These shelves will probably eventually go onto wheels as I go, because I am like I said, if I need to move something, it's a small studio. Like if I need to build something like those shelves, I can move everything out of the way so I can do it. And I lined it up. I set it up. I watched how they did it on the Today Show and HLN and all these other news outlets. And I can't do what they did with actually having platforms moving, but I can definitely have the tables move if I need them.
And for me, it was really fun. We were going to NAB to do the show from there, and I thought, can I export everything that I have on my desk to a mobile rig that I can take out in the field? And I came up with this. I didn't get to use it because there was no room in the place, but it was really a fun exercise going through. This is an entire office hours remote contribution thing. There's a camera behind the teleprompter at the top of that. I have my normal 2 monitors on the sides, my laptop running the actual thing. It's very thin. I used that little arm system that Newer came out with last year, and it really worked well. You can see my 5D, not the 5D, but the Blackmagic Pocket 6K up behind the teleprompter. And this thing, even if I swung in the arms and things like that, I could get through doorways really easy. So it was planned on being a mobile system that I could really literally just set up once. It's on essentially a baby roller stand, and the wheels of that fold up. So even though you have to take things down, it was pretty mobile. So I was looking forward to that. Wasn't able to use it this year, maybe in the future sometime. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's reporting a security researcher was able to plant false memories in ChatGPT. Thoughts?
This is scary as heck. Jesse Kester, what are your thoughts?
So I want to give a little bit of context to this question. So what it means to implant false memories is that it is affecting how ChatGPT remembers its users. So when you interact with ChatGPT, it keeps track of all your conversations over the entire length that you've been connected to it through your account. What these false memories were doing is changing the person who was using it in dramatic ways. So as I build a relationship with ChatGPT, it understands my worldview, it understands my opinions on beauty and art and politics and things like that. And what they had done was converted a regular user in dramatic ways. Like they turned them into a flat earther. ChatGPT thought that the person using them through false memories was a flat earther. This is a very dramatic test, and it seems to be one that ChatGPT can patch. But the danger of things like this cannot be overstated, because if I jump on ChatGPT and it starts talking to me as if I'm a flat earther, I'm going to assume that it's, hallucinating, that it's not very bright, that it's a bad algorithm. The real danger is not these dramatic changes, but having the generative dialogue change you in small ways incrementally over long periods of time, as we saw with social media. Look at how Facebook has kind of crowbarred the entire global conversation into its weird vision over 10 years. You change somebody half a degree every year, and over 10 years, they're 5 degrees different from who they were a decade ago. And that's the real danger in manipulating how these algorithms interact with people.
Oh, great. The era of AI gaslighting is coming. That's scary. Alex, what are your thoughts?
You can get a lot of these algorithms to do a lot of crazy things if you push them hard enough. So if you get them to their extremes and you start tweaking them hard, you can definitely have them do some even Midjourney, ChatGPT, anything. If you keep on whacking at them at a very unusual angle, you can get them to hallucinate pretty quickly, and most researchers have found that. But if you do that to a person, they'll do the same thing. So I think that that they are reacting that way. I think that, like everything else, you shouldn't trust anything that comes out from one source ever. So whether it's a person or an algorithm, you should always be using this as the beginning of a conversation, a beginning of a research, and then you should find other sources. And a lot of people won't do that, and then they'll be wrong. But that has been the case for the last 100,000 years. So.
It's one thing to poison a well, though. It's another thing to poison the oceans. And
like we talk about this. I'm sorry. I just people have this whole thing like ChatGPT is worse than the unified press, which told us all lies in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. The Hearst solutions, the crazy things that people said in the 18th century, all these belief systems. People have been nuts since there were people, and they've had nutty ideas and nutty thought processes and nutty things that they thought were real, and so people have been nutty forever. And this is just another version of nutty, but it's not any, I just have to admit, I don't believe it's any worse or any better than any other nutty version of people. And so we have to always be looking at, what are we looking at? And we can't fix everybody. We can't fix how the general population is going to do crazy things. It's just that it used to be that they all believed the same thing. That was nutty. Now they all believe different things that are nutty, but they're all nutty. And most of what you see is not the whole truth. Most of what you see is largely limited, and largely didacted from what you're seeing. So you don't have the whole proof, and you couldn't handle it even if you could. There was some movie about that, right? So the thing is that I just don't. I don't buy into a lot of the fear of this, because I just think that it's always been this way, and it's just, I don't think it's particularly worse than it was before. I do think social media makes people crazy. I also think notification, this is my nutty stuff. I don't go on Facebook. I go up every once in a while and apologize to everyone that I haven't been here for 3 months, and I answer, tell them here's my email, or here's whatever, or let's talk, or whatever. I use Twitter, but I have my Twitter or X or whatever they call it, is heavily didacted. I have 150 terms that filters it out. So in other words, it says, all this Twitter's gone bad. I don't know. If you say anything political, I don't even see it. So I just get those things. And so the thing is that what we can do is, for ourselves, we can take away some of the things that make us insane. I think notifications are destroying the world. That's my nutty belief, is because I think interrupting people all the time while they're trying to think destroys their ability to have real thought. And so I think that these are all the things that, and I don't mean notifications from Facebook. I mean notifications. My phone is on do not disturb all the time. All of my computers. I don't ever want anything to beep. I don't ever want anything to do it, make anything, because I would like to have real thoughts, and you can't do that when you're constantly being interrupted. And so I just think that there's a lot of things that make people crazy. I don't think it's only ChatGPT or social media.
Jeffrey Powers, your turn.
I just had a crazy beep, and I found out it was Mastodon, and then trying to figure out how to turn off that beep was just a pain in the... So there's an old saying, and a really old saying, and that is, he who owns the printing press controls the information. And you might think, well, no, the newspaper does, but it's the person that does the printing press. That's why we have editors and copy editors and other people that were checking all the articles as the newspapers started to roll out, just in case somebody decided to throw in something that didn't work from there. There's always going to be a Kevin Mitnick in the world, and they'll either want to do it maliciously, or they'll want to do it so they can prove that they can do it, so they can get the high-end paying job to fix those problems that they've created. So it's never going to go away. The next big thing after ChatGPT or AI is going to have all those types of hackers that are trying to figure out the corners in the system, and we're trying to find out different ways. That's why you don't trust wiki pages as much, because of the fact that people are always trying to change the information.
Next question.
Peter Moore in Auckland, New Zealand. This awesome track by the Analogues features a large screen in the background. Are the screens all small and large as indicated by borders, or is it one large screen that they've masked off? Enjoy a great track too, by the way.
And he's got a link there to the performance. Alex, did you get a chance to look
here?
at it?
I took a look at it. The person that really should answer this is Tlaloc. But what I would say is that this is most likely one big screen that is a reverse projection with these lines in them. So they're probably pieces of wood, that are there that are, creating that shadow. But otherwise, it's one big projection. I don't think that I think it's probably a projection. I think that an LED wall would moray. And maybe not, but there's some close-ups and so on and so forth that there's some close-ups on it that I think would have been difficult to do with an LED wall. So as I looked at it, I really think a reverse projection screen with this kind of thing would be super common in this kind of environment. So I don't think that they would, but if they're changing it all the time, I see people are saying it's changing all the time. Well, if it's changing all the time, then it could be an LED wall. But it probably would not be a projection if it was that big, because those lines are pretty sharp. So it could be. It'd just be a really nice one.
Next. Oh, I'm sorry, Jesse. You wanted to get in on that.
The images change all the time, but the layout stays the same. I think you got it, Alex, with the rear projection. Also, as the Analogues, it's pretty much everything analog, so that would make sense too. That would be consistent with their aesthetic.
Yeah, it does stay the same. Sorry, I was looking at different angles when people were cutting between it, but yeah, it does look like that stays the same.
It's the same layout.
Again, that would be the most common way to do that. The most common way to do that would be a reverse projection.
Next question.
Robert Shoji in Los Angeles asks, what color calibration card do you recommend?
Jesse Kester, start us off.
I will do that. The best color calibration card is the one that you have with you, and we use the passports. And these are fantastic. They like $100, maybe $120 for each one. They've got video and photo. And Alex, I'm going to trust you to speak on the different calibration cards that go up from the passport.
Alex?
I mean, the industry standard is a Chroma Demont chart by DSC Labs. They are going out of business. So they're closing their business. They're retiring. They're not going to make them anymore, it looks like. I don't know if someone's going to come in and save us from that. But right now, these are the ones that I use. The 24, this is actually the one that I use. This is the 24-4R. And so I also have a 12, but these are, and you can get them in a lot of different sizes. They are expensive. I think they're anywhere from $800 to $2,000 or $800 to $5,000, depending how big and how many things are in them. And you keep them in a case all the time to make sure they don't get sun damage or UV damage or anything else, so they stay accurate. They do have an expiration date, but we all ignore it. But that's the ones that, when you really want to know what's going on with your cameras, that's the one you use. They are the next one down from that are usually the X-Rite. There's a video version of the X-Rite that a lot of us use. The advantage of these Chroma Demont charts is actually that this is in a rectangular pattern. So that what it means is that what a lot of times what I do to make this work. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit here. Let's see if I can. There we go. So a lot of times what I do, if I'm not, is I'll split right through here between two cameras. if I'm matching them. And so I cut right through there. And then what I do is I make sure I don't see a line. So I just keep doing the color correction until the line between these disappears. And when the line between those disappears, your two cameras are matching. And there's ways to do that. You can do it with color. Sometimes I'll bring it into a live compositor and break it out into RGB. So I'm matching the red, green, and blue separately in black and white, which it makes it easier to see. But when you do that, you'll nail those cameras, together. Now, the other thing that I do is I'll capture those. And we've said this before. I'll corner pin them on top of each other inside a Resolve, build LUTs that do the same thing, but I have the top one as a difference key, and I go until they turn black. That's another way to do it, but it's because they cover that range, and also for me because I can run one line through all of them, which I can't do with the X-Rite. The pattern on the X-Rite, I do have the Pocket X-Rite, the same one that Jesse has. And when we're shooting quickly, I'll open that up and put it in front of a camera that I'm going to color correct later, because that's going to help me do that color correction really quickly. But if I'm really trying to match cameras, I'm going to use a Demont chart.
Jeffrey Powers.
Yeah, I use the spider. I just realized it's right over there. And I always try and put something very colorful into shots. So when I do have a color matched, this is not going to color match anything, but it's going to tell me if there's a color that's off from that. Notice how I have that in the nice cross pattern. I do have a side question, though, because last season's episode of Evil, they had these. One of the characters was seeing premonitions, so he put up a color chart and a resolution chart, and they were actually like bed sheets, and they were hanging from his wall. So my understanding is that would never work in a regular situation, correct? Because it's just because of the fading and things like that.
Well, I don't think the resolution of printing on fabric is anywhere near the resolution of printing on like chrome coat, high quality paper on a web press. That's one of the reasons those things like the Chrome Dumont charts are so expensive, is that their color control of printing is monstrously complex to make sure that it's a scientifically accurate chart. So I don't think I've ever heard of a fabric printer that could do that kind of thing successfully. I mean, for a normal, for something like bars or something like that, you could probably get away with it. But I don't even know for that, because that's a color accuracy chart. Next question.
Aaron Cody from St. Louis, Missouri is asking, on my ATEM SDI Extreme ISO, the time code generator is running fast, drifting plus or minus 6 seconds over 20 minutes in 59.94 frame rates per second. Has anyone else had this issue? Is the internal clock really just that bad?
Alex.
I don't think it has a crystal. So I think it's probably sliding around. I've never really depended that much on the time code generator from the ATEM, but I don't think that they're really. I mean, it would be much more expensive if they put in a proper time code generator. So I don't. 6 seconds at 20 minutes does seem like a lot. It really feels like. I can't do the math in my head that quickly, but it really feels like somehow the clock is running at 60 and you're getting 59.94 or something like that, where it looks like it's a difference between whole frames and drop frames, but I don't know for sure.
Next question.
Robert Shoji in Los Angeles, what clapboard/slate do you recommend?
Guy Cochran's going to start us off. Guy?
Yeah, I think the industry standard that you're going to see out there is the Denekis. There's also Betso has a nice one, and now Deity. These guys came out with like an $899 version, and you can use these little boxes so that your cameras, depending on which camera you have, you'll have these different cables like BNCs and LEMOs and 3.5 millimeters to be able to sync that time code across all the different cameras and audio recorders and whatever else you need to. But I would also just look at hiring a professional sound guy that knows this stuff inside and out, because you get into time code and you get into syncing everything up. You want to make sure it's done right. And these guys, they'll just add that into your invoice, add slate, and boom. But guys will come in with $25,000 worth of gear and 20 years of experience and save your bacon instead of having a little accident and your editor is then complaining that your time code is off.
Alex.
Yeah, the Deneki is what I typically use for almost everything. Nikki also pointed out with ambient. I've heard they're great. I just haven't used them. Denicky, we just rent them. I don't buy a Denicky. I don't own one. I just rent one. They're not that expensive to rent on a given day. So we use them. So anytime we're doing a major production, we're typically using the Denickys. I actually use the movie slate on my iPad for a lot of small stuff, just because it's really easy to annotate, throw up in front of the camera or cameras if we're doing interviews, and grab something real quickly. So that's an app that you can get. It's got a lot of tools in it that I use relatively often for that type of thing. I wouldn't use it for mission critical timecode stuff, but it is something that is good to have on your computer. The other thing to think about is also just a cheap slate that you can use that you can just close. The reason that you might want to have those, like a $20 or $30 one that is reasonable size you can close is a lot of times when we're trying to work out sync for live, we just run out on stage. A lot of times we don't get a lot of time to do this, and there's all this crazy clapping and silly stuff that people do. And a lot of times what we do is we start streaming so that we have the stream, it's going out recorded wherever it's going to be recorded, like YouTube or whatever, HLS. We have someone just run out on stage, the camera looks at it, we have a mic, someone holds the mic and someone goes whack, and then that's it. Then they run off stage. And then what we do is we grab that video, we take it into an NLE of your choice, and we just look at what the offset is between the audio and the video. That measures the entire chain all the way through. This whole clapping thing is really, we do it because if we don't do it, people will, if anything goes wrong, we'll get blamed that, they didn't do the sync test or whatever. But the clapping thing is absurd, and we really need to put a stop to it someday. But we do it. We still do it to look good. But then we just come out and do the slate and call it a day.
Jesse Kester.
Slates are also useful for appearance. We break out, tens of thousands of dollars a gear in lenses, but when that clapboard comes out, ooh la la, does the client sparkle.
It's the rolling numbers. It's the little lit up Nixie tube type rolling numbers everybody loves seeing. Next question.
This one's a QR code from Michael Patrick in Chicago. With products like Meyer Cal, EAW Anya and Holoplot, is beam steering the future of sound or just another tool in the toolbox?
Alex, what do you think?
Maybe. I think a lot of these, I think that the challenge there is really, is it practical for a lot of the spaces? So when you say the future of certain places, maybe to do that, but that's the challenge, is will it be widely adopted? And I'm not sure.
And if you want some discussion of that, look at yesterday's show. We had a great show yesterday with some of the best minds in audio, and they talked a little bit about, I think Michael at the end of that, somewhere about 2/3 of the way through the show, was talking about beamforming and the particularly line arrays and their coverage area and things like that. So you could learn something useful from that. That's yesterday's show. Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas asks, I want to take a step down from my ATEM Mini to the simplest possible HDMI to USB interface. So what's reliable?
Guy Cochran.
What I see out there mostly is AJU taps and Magewells. There's also the roll-in UVC model that looks like this. It's called the roll-in web presentation dock. And I tested this one and I found it to have some of the best color out of a bunch of different cheapy type USB devices. You can get ones that are as simple as low cost as $20, and the color is going to be wildly off. But if you want something that's bulletproof that works every time, I was in the show this week and we had a gang full of these Magewells going into this Teams meeting for a high-level event. So if you want to know what the big guys are using, it's the Magewells.
Alexander Knight.
Yeah, the UTAP's a good one. A little bit more pricey than the Roland one, but the Roland, Paul, if you don't need the audio interface part, you can get the same quality that the UVC2 has without the audio interface part, and just get the Roland UVC1, which is $249 on Sweetwater since you're in the US. And these will give you completely uncompressed video quality going in over YUY2. So these, like Guy was saying, the video quality of these look very good.
Next question.
From the QR code, Chester Sweeney in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm looking on Sweetwater and I see these Ashdown meters OV1B Connect Pro editions over-ear Bluetooth headphones for $251 and want to know, where does the quality sit at? Beginner, amateur, artist, or professional?
Alexander, put on your panelist hat. What do you got?
They sit in the bin, which is where they belong, because I would never buy a pair of headphones with VU meters on the sides. Think about that. That's where you lose me. When I got these in our store, I was just look at this. I mean, this is just ridiculous. A VU meter. Think about this. You put it on your head. When are you ever going to look at this? It is just absurd. And no, you can find better quality Bluetooth headphones for that price. Like I would look at the Audio-Technica ATH M50 Bluetooth version 2. This is just silly.
An analog VU meter nonetheless. I wonder if it has soft clipping built in. That's fun. Yeah, weirdness. Let's go to the next question.
John Snyder in Reno, Nevada is asking, what happens to the image quality in Zoom if a person has used a custom LUT to fix the ATEM gray issue in camera? How does Zoom's correction of a corrected issue appear?
And I have no idea, and nobody else has raised their hand. Custom LUTs. Well, I know a little bit about LUTs. I mean, the ATEM gray issue, I think we've talked about a good little bit on the show. And I think at one point that there was a software update, and whatever that correction is, I think it got built in. So my first suggestion, John, and you've been here a lot, you've been on the panel, so I'm assuming that you have the latest and greatest version of Zoom's software. So I guess you could use a custom LUT to fix it. You'd be remapping gray values from one thing by default to another value, but I'm not quite sure, and Alex has had to step away for a moment to prep for something, so we're probably not going to give you the best answer possible today. Maybe bring back and check another day. Next question.
Gordon Lake in Los Angeles, California. This commercial was created using Runway, Midjourney, Kling, Luma, and Photoshop. Does the cost of staying in this business include subscribing to a dozen tools and committing the daily hours to learn them? And there's a YouTube link there.
Yeah, an interesting question you're posing here. Jeffrey Powers, your take on it.
Well, right now, right now everything's in the Wild West of AI. So, and in all reality, you could actually put together your own server farm and create your own AI from said server farm. It's just going to cost you a lot of money, a lot of time, and of course a lot of power. So right now that they're seeing what a lot of people are using some of the other ones simply because to see what they can do and say, well, maybe I can be better on that. Maybe I can do better on that. Some of the AI subscriptions that I have, really, I don't pay more than $100 a month for different AIs that I use. So, and of course, I don't have a video AI just yet. I've been doing all the free trials on those because I've been watching some of the fun failures that have come from those types of AI videos. But to get something that really matches exactly what the client is looking for and you're looking for, yeah, you definitely have to go through some of the other AIs and AI models to see what they can offer and what they can do. Because one will go left while the other one goes right, and you got to make sure that at the end of the day, you're making something for the client. In this case, it was a vodka company. And if they're happy about it, they're going to pay for it too, because then they can say, hey, we were the first successful AI commercial, or we were the first successful AI commercial to do this or whatnot.
Jesse Kester.
Equipment costs money, learning costs time. Both bring value to your business. I do want to take a quick look at this ad, though, just to get a sense of what we're talking about. And there's the play button. So it looks very AI generated. It feels very AI generated, like lots of over sharpening, lots of kind of image detail, that weird face not really working right. And when I look at this, what I'm seeing is bullet time in 2000. That if you wanted to buy 100 Canon 5Ds and do bullet time for a year and then have it completely fall out of favor because looks very, very, very dated and tethered to this one aesthetic. You can go all in on a production that looks and feels like this and a pipeline that looks and feels like this. But boy, howdy, I'm telling you, in a year, this is going to look archaic, like completely archaic. I know the tools will develop in advance, but that style it's going to last a month before people are rolling their eyes. People are already rolling their eyes, I'd argue.
Yeah, the other thing I'd note is that we had some friends over for cocktails a couple of days ago, and one of the couple people works at Lionsgate, and so we were talking about AI generation, and she said, you should take a look at the website, and we did, and they have a big piece on their website about Runway and their use of those tools. So I immediately thought, okay, the major players are investigating very heavily all this stuff. It's not just all of us who talk about this. These huge companies that have global reach and almost unlimited resources compared to most of us are doing exactly the same research that we're all looking into. I do think it's really important to understand the capabilities, the limitations, the parameters of what these things can and can't do. And I think Jesse gave us a good example of the subtleties of beginning to understand what it's really good for and where it falls still short. But it would be crazy not to keep your eye on it to understand. But I came away from that discussion with some really smart people about this stuff, and I was not as concerned as I had been before that it's just going to sweep all the jobs away and the computers are going to completely take over. I do think there's some areas where we still have to be careful. Jesse? You want to come back in on this?
Yeah, and as much as studying what the tools can and can't do, it's, I think, doubly important to study how humans react to what the tools do and don't do. And that's kind of, for me, that moves the needle more than whatever AI generation is happening in the moment.
Yeah. Interesting discussion, and we will be continuing to have it constantly as you guys ask questions about it here on Office Hours. Next question.
From Aaron Cody in St. Louis, Missouri, any recommendations for how to rig a top-down shot, something for which the base is on the floor, not on a desk? All I currently own is tripods.
Guy Cochran, help us out.
Yeah, it depends on how creative you want to get, how large the object is. If it's just small objects, you can get away with not having to build such an elaborate big rig. One of my former employees, he built this for his cooking videos, where he went to the local Ace Hardware and bought all this steel pipe, and then you can see even it's strong enough that even his kid starts swinging around on the thing, because it's basically a base like that where he's got it so that it's just beefy. And then you can see that this is the results with his cooking videos, but you can see how he's rigged up the camera up top with a slider so that he can get these great shots for these overheads. There's also pre-built stuff. You can go on I know Mickey doesn't like these guys, but ProAim has an overhead rig set up that they've probably knocked off from somebody else. But I would look at ProAims, and if it's just a simple one, Small Rig does have something small. And I'd also look at DSLR Shooter. He has one. I can't find the video, but he has one a video. If you type in how to make an overhead camera rig, look at the video from Caleb Pike. He has a great one.
Alex.
Yeah, I was grabbing some images here. Let me, so there's a couple different ways to do it. It depends on how much flexibility you want to have as well. So I'm just trying to go into full screen here. So what I like to do for overheads is actually using jibs. And so this is an easy jib. I don't know if they make this anymore, but it's a great jib. You can put it together in 15 minutes. And what we do is, the nice thing about having a jib here, and this is like the original Red, by the way, many years ago, but this is allowing us to basically see our hands. And this was for some science training that we were doing. And so you have the ability to see your hands up in the front here, and it's directly over top. But the nice thing about a jib is that you can keep moving it around. So you can't underestimate how much it takes to constantly, I really wish it was a little further over this way, or I really wish it was a little further over that way. With a jib, you do that. And there's a lot of different prices of jibs. Be careful of spending too little. I have tried and not found a jib under about $1,500, that's worth using. And really $2,500, $3,000 is about where you get into, having those things. But I strongly prefer those. Now, another way to do it is this is from cooking, but this is a thing we set up for MasterChef. And so we did what we call a goalpost. So this is your C-stands on either side, and you run a bar over top of it. And this is where we can get our overhead camera here. Of course, we got a teleprompter and some other angles and so on and so forth. You can see a bigger version of this here where you can see that now this is starting to use speed rail. So we had lights and cameras in these mounted. They had a couple mounts here, but you can see the cameras. These are PTZ cameras that are running along a longer goalposted speed rail that allowed us to get a lot of those overhead shots as well. So goalposting and jibs are the way that I usually approach most of those things.
Yeah, and I think I've talked a few times about the fact that in my studio before I moved from Arizona to California, I had an IFF studio rail system there. Then one of the great things about it, not only were was it on tracks and it had rollers, but you could get pantographs, and it was lovely to hang a camera for that because for exactly the reason that Alex articulated earlier, if the shot is almost perfect but the person's hand is just obscuring the feature on the desktop you have to see, you can literally move it over 3 inches and the shot is perfect instead of unusable, and that is worth its weight in gold if you're billing. If you have people on the set, it's costing you a lot per hour to get the production done. Next question.
David Brady in New York City, New York asks, what options are there for Dante on a PCI card to use inside a Sonntetech Expansion chassis?
Alexander Knight, help us out.
I didn't get a chance to do much research. I came up with 3 options, and a couple of them are concerning, so I'll mention them. The Focusrite RedNet PCI E-card, Yamaha makes one, and SSL makes one, although I can't find the SSL card on the website. I found this through the Audinate website because they have a list of products there that you can look at. Both the Focusrite and the Yamaha claim that they are not compatible with Apple Silicon Macs, only Intel, so that's a little bit concerning. So beyond that, I haven't really done any other research. I looked at RME and I didn't find anything other than just MADI support for PCI, so it doesn't look like they do. Perhaps somebody else in the chat, or maybe Mickey has a better suggestion than I have.
Well, Alex is going to take a shot at it. Alex?
Just adding that Mickey said Focusrite, the 100%. So that was
There you go. Next question.
Next one's from Andy Kokendorfer in Viera, Florida. New content summarizer AI from Mozilla Orbit. Avoid watching entire YouTube videos to find desired content. Easy Firefox add-on. Maintains privacy.
Alex, what do you think?
I'm going to try it. It's not because I'm not worried about the privacy if I'm having it look at a page. So it's summarizing a page or summarizing a video or whatever. It seems like a pretty cool, a cool add-on for Firefox. So I'm definitely going to check it out.
Alexander Knight, you want to get in on this?
I just want to talk about I totally skip if some videos don't get right to the point, I'll skip to it to try to find the information that I want. Is it that difficult that we need to now have computers to figure this stuff and summarize stuff for us? I don't understand. I like watching the entire video if it's well done. But you can easily skip through it yourself with a mouse. It's not that much effort.
It can be hard. I mean, you got to admit, there's a lot of creators that spend a lot of time in the preamble. And I, my whole thing is I don't even need you to if you titled it well, I'm expecting what you said to be given to me in the first 30 seconds. And then you can keep on expounding on it. But I think that a lot of creators get into this subscribe and and here's the thing and here's all the setup and you're 4 minutes into it before you start talking about what you're needing. And so I think that this is a reaction to, poor content delivery, and I think that's the challenge.
Jeffrey Powers.
The bigger challenge is the type of video and the audio that is produced from that, because a lot of these AIs, what they'll do is they'll take the SRT that Google generates or YouTube generates to create the summaries, to create the information. And if the audio is horrible and it's getting transcription wrong, then it's not going to work for what you're looking for. But if something like this, where we're all sitting here in front of our microphones, you shouldn't have a problem doing any type of summarization or information. There might still be a little bit of incorrectness, I'd say about 5% incorrectness when it comes to doing any type of AI transcription. So.
I'm just flashing back to parts of my career when I've been sitting around a boardroom table with 5 or 6 other people and hopefully somebody who's really good at the topic leading that discussion. They watch the same piece of video and you get 4 different perspectives out of 5 people. And usually the leader of that group, when you get a good leader, it's like, you work on that aspect. Let's not spend 15 minutes talking about it. And they keep you focused on going down the most productive path. That's my biggest concern about these kind of AI summarizers is who's programming what are the paths of importance that let the discussion open up. In those real life around the conference table things, somebody could bring up something from their area of expertise and it would turn out that the other people looked at that and said, yeah, that is important. We need to spend more time on this. I'm worried when you kind of middle of the road, whatever the algorithm that's driving the AR says is important, that you miss those little sidebars. I may be wrong about that. It may turn out to be a fabulous tool and save everybody tons of time and everybody's happy with it. Those are just my experiences from having grown up around those conference tables in my career. And you never can tell when the important thing pops up. Somehow, organically, a group of people will find it. I'm not sure an algorithm will, but I may be proved to be wrong. Next question.
Jeremy Murray in St. John, New Brunswick. Is there a good PTZ cable for about $200 Canadian?
Jeffrey Powers, can you help him out?
I'm wondering if you meant camera instead of cable. If you did mean cable, there's several different options, but it really depends on what type of cable you're talking about. Are you running HDMI or are you running SDI? How long of a cable do you need? Are you going 3 feet or 30 feet or 100 feet? Those are all factors that are going to be in deciding your cable for whatnot. And of course, some of these PTZs also run NDI, so you have Ethernet cables that are involved here. So I think we need a little bit more information to give you the proper answer for the cables. If you meant a camera, you're going to be really hard-pressed to try and find a PTZ camera that works really well for under $200.
Next question.
Eduardo Agustin, Panama City. I'm looking for ways to implement an animated stinger for sports without using a hyperdeck. I got an ATEM Mini Extreme ISO. Can I do this without another tool?
Alex Lindsay.
You'll need another tool, but the question is what tool that might be. So one of the things that you could probably do is do something like Playout B. Playout B can look like a hyperdeck. Basically, the way the stinger works, and the problem is you don't have an alpha channel there, so you would have to figure out how you're going to do a key and whether that's the real challenge for you. And I don't think Playout B does keys yet, but if you have something that can see or act like and send out a key fill, and MIDI does this, QLab I believe does this as well as Softron, those would know what to do with the alpha channel. I think you can actually set up a key for the stinger, but I'm not 100% sure because I've never tried that. But what it does is it needs to play that video out, and then it needs to know what frame it's going to transition from feed A to feed B. But you're still going to need something if it's not a hyperdeck to play it out. But Playout B would probably be the least expensive. I just don't know whether I haven't ever tried to do a Luma key on a Playout B output, and that's the part that I'd have to look at.
See if we can get through one more. Next question.
Stefan Fischer in Wurzburg, Germany. Custom-made in-ears. There are ones with almost complete isolation and others that let more surrounding noise through. I assume that those who let more noise through feel more natural in an office hours-like setting. What is your recommendation?
Alex?
I'm kind of all or nothing. So I want it to be like, I would like it to seal my ear if I put it in my ear. I have, my general use case though, is I actually use bone conduction. That way I hear everything around me, but I can hear whatever I need to listen to too if I'm on a phone call or other things. I use the Shocks, open comms. I also use the Shocks, the swimmer one. I swim with my open comms, and they actually work pretty well. The swimming version, don't use the regular ones in the water. They won't work anymore. I've tried. so anyway, I was like, I wonder if it was anyway. So I use the open ear, but if I want to plug my ears, I would prefer them to be plugged all the way. when I'm trying to talk or listen to music, or because it allows you to turn the volume down a fair bit, and so it doesn't do as much damage to your ears. Of course, the in between is if you're trying to do not in ears, but you're trying to hit that. That's the next challenge.
Notes for tomorrow. On Friday, we are talking drones, particularly as a camera platform. So if you're interested in drones and how to integrate them into your workflow, tomorrow's your day. On Saturday, don't forget it's all Q&A as usual. We do that every Saturday, and we have kind of a different system in the back end, so stop by and check that. And Sunday, as always, is a bit more philosophical. It's also a show that we do not broadcast on YouTube, so it's where we have a chance to experiment a bit and discuss more introspective and speculative topics. And finally, if you would like to help the show get by and extend our coverage, you can always go to officehours.com/donate. That is where you will find an ability to pop in some money to help us do a better job here every day. Be right back. Our second hour guest today is executive producer